Lam. We're very happy to have her here as the first author, and she's going to talk about her books today. And this is an award-winning novel, The Lonely American, and this is also her first novel. It's a book about the Vietnam War and the military personnel and also the civilians involved in the war. And she's going to talk about it. And also, born in Vietnam and educated in America, Vera is bilingual. So she also did a translation herself and translate her book into a Chinese version. You can see over there. So this book is available in English, both in English and Chinese. Now Vera's gonna, I'm sure she can talk a little bit more about the book, and also she can tell you more better than I can. So you guys are not here to listen to me to talk. So I'm gonna give it to her. Please welcome Vera Lam.
Hello. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. It's really like a dream come true to be standing here and speaking. I lived in Foster City for many years. In fact, I spent hundreds of hours hiding at the back here, writing drafts, many drafts. And I was many times sitting over here listening to other authors, and they were all very inspirational. And I always thought, maybe one day I could stand up here and speak as well. So, but that was like 7 or 8 years ago. So, thank you very much. The Lonely American. So, it's not, today's 2015 already. This April 30th, it'll be the 40 years anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. 40 years. People have short memory.
Yeah.
So my goal is trying to bring back the memory of the war from different perspectives. Not from a politician's perspective, not from a Marine's perspective, not from the President or McNamara or the Secretary of Defense or all these people, because 20,000 books have been written on the war. I want to talk about the ordinary people. I want to talk about the people who have suffered, the little people whom you never see or hear them on the radio. You never see them on television. So let me begin by saying, why switch from high-tech to literature? I have been a Silicon Valley entrepreneur for over 20 years. I have a master's degree in computer science, computer engineering from USC. Then I went to Harvard, did an MBA, and then I went to Silicon Valley. I wanted to forget all about my upbringing. I wanted to forget all about the war. And sure enough, many years later, when my father passed away, when the United States decided to launch a war in Afghanistan, it quickly brought back the memory, those horrific memory about the Vietnam War. And that was the time I decided I should write. I want to tell stories. I want to tell my own version of this story. From childhood to adolescence, I was fortunately enough to be, well, fortunately or unfortunately, to be exposed to war. I love to write diaries. I kept diaries ever since I was 8 or 9 years old. And I love music. And I love stories. The Little Prince, La Chèvre de Monsieur Saga, Trois Moulins, de Nuit, many. Diaries sad, I told in my diary. When I was scared, I wrote it down. When there was a huge explosion in the middle of the night, and then all the power went out, and I quickly climbed down to the table. Maybe just like earthquake in California? I don't know. And also kept records of all that. But many years later, after I became an engineer, I came to Silicon Valley. I started doing technologies. I was an entrepreneur. I became a computer. I wanted to get far away from literature, from the war, from Vietnam, because I was so insecure. I wanted to establish stability in my new home in America. So, like everybody else, fell in love with the technology. Now today, how much time do you spend on our cell phones, on our apps? Can we actually get away from them for maybe an hour or 2 hours? So in Chinese, in Taiwan, there is like a term for it. It's called 低头族, which means that your head, you always bow down. You know, there's like, we call them the people who always bow because they're always so polite because they always bow down. Right. So are we kidnapped, by technology? Do we still have time for literature? Maybe. Well, if history serves as a mirror for our mankind, from Hiroshima to Second World War to Dan Ellsberg to the horrific Vietnam War to many of the wars that I need not mention, then I say literature is the soul of a people. Today, we still print War and Peace, the nth version, the nth edition. We still talk about Kafka. We still talk about Banzai's Lost Illusions. We still talk about Lucine's Akil-Zhengzhuan. We still talk about James Joyce. We still talk about Hamlet and all that. And I loved Edith Wharton. So, can you spare a little time for reading? Why is reading important? Because reading, literature records war, and war is very important to us. The learning of why the war happened, the learning of what happened after all these massacres and things. And men, and war, men have this fascination with war, right? I thought Vietnam War was the end of everything. That was the most horrific experience I have. After 1975, everything is going to be good. Okay, it's going to be peace forever. That was my hope. And when I got so scared when I had to stay overnight at the school because of an explosion that happened earlier, and I thought there was the most horrifying things that any child, people could ever experience. But look what happened today. The American War in Vietnam, we don't call it Vietnam War in Vietnam. We call it American War in Vietnam. And the Dien Bien Phu, we call it the French War in Vietnam. And we call it the Japanese War. It's not the Vietnam War. It started in 1954 in the Tonkin Bay incident. I'm sure a lot of you know that. The reason for that incident. It was the setup, it was the cause, very much like how we display Saddam Hussein. And it ends in 1975, April 30th. during which time 1.4 million soldiers, and I'm talking about everyone, the North Vietnamese, the Liberation Army from the South, the Americans, the Australians, and all the Allied forces. 4 million civilians were killed. Of course, the refugees, boat people, counted 2.2 million. And some of the people sitting here today were boat people, were refugees, including myself. So, is it okay to recount horror story? Yes. I want to share my memory of the war. I want to know, how can all these powerful American soldiers, when they come to Saigon, how could they transform a city to a completely different image? How come there's so many bars, mushroom, just 2 blocks from my elementary school, after the Americans come? There's so much wealth that the Americans brought in during Saigon, during those years. And I remember when I saw these mighty American military police with the machine guns, and carrying, and the huge muscles and everything. And they are so strong, they're so powerful. And then when you see those little Vietnamese Viet Cong people, they're like little, we call them rats, we call them mouse, because they live in the jungle. They don't even have the right kind of boots to wear. And then one day, everything was gone. Why? Why were we deserted? Why did they desert us? I never understood. So, I think that the makers of war, and who are they? They're the politicians, they're the administrators, they're the Secretary of Defense. They have short memory. 30-something years after the Vietnam War, which was the watershed moment, I think. We're going to Afghanistan, we're going to Iraq, and look what happened to the Middle East today. So can we talk? Not fight? Maybe. What are the problems? No, we want a revenge. Because he did something to me. I have to do something back. Violence is a lot better than talk, right? Because it shows that we have power. It shows that we have muscle. But on the other end, who are the bearers of the war? In 2014, 50 million refugees. There are 51 million refugees currently worldwide in Syria, Middle East, Africa, and all the world. This is the largest number since World War II. That's why I wanted to write. So, I already said, so there are more than 20,000 books that have been published in a dozen languages. So is this just another book? No, I think not. This is the voice of the ordinary people. They're the voice of the bearers of the war. I'm presenting this book in 2 separate perspectives. From the American Air Force officer perspective, and then from the little girl's perspective. That is, the makers of the war and the bearers of the war, and see how they contrast and come together. and compare. I want to dedicate this book to all the people, not just the American soldiers, not just the North Vietnamese soldiers. I want to dedicate to everyone, to all the 4 million people and the 1.4 million soldiers who died, because I think they're all victims of the war. And most of all, I also wanted to dedicate to my father, who was a spy. And who had worked 35 years as a spy for his beloved country, which is Taiwan. His book is about war, love. Many people have compared war and love. If there is war, there must be love. Otherwise, people could not bear it. It's the love. And I'm not talking about the love between a man and a woman. I'm talking about love between a man, a soldier, and his compatriots. And I'm talking the love about the soldiers, and the little people in Vietnam. And sometimes even the love between two enemies, right? American soldier and the North Vietnamese soldiers. And identity. Identity, which is my identity in a way. So does a refugee have identity? Does both people have identity after you lose everything? So it's like going to another country. You have to reestablish everything again. So are you a political refugee? Are you an economic refugee? What are you? How do you re-establish your identity when you are just a teenager? How do you find the confidence? And is this book still relevant today? What is the message I wanted to send? So now let me switch and talk a little bit about the writing process. It took me 6 years to write the English version. Of course, I was a computer scientist. I had a very logical mind. And I started writing it as a memoir after my father passed away. And after 200 pages, and I found it was extremely difficult. It was really difficult because I was too close to the situation. And then I started taking creative writing classes. And I found this new word called fiction, called historical fiction. That is something that I can use my characters. I can use everyone that I've met in my life, from childhood to adolescence, to whenever. I can use them to represent me. And give the messages I want to give. In a very subtle way. I'm no historian. I was a refugee. I don't have the authority to tell people what to do. I can only share stories. And hopefully I can find someone who resonates with what I want to share. So that was my chief purpose. But the most difficult part for me was the theme. So what do I want to convey? What is the theme of my book? It took me a long time to figure out, and I finally got it down in the last year. Right. So what is a theme? Is it a subject matter? A moral lesson? A sermon? A prescription for conduct? Anyone?
Should be all of the above, Vera.
You're of the above. Yes. I think all of these, they are good themes for fiction writers and non-fiction writers. Novel is about stories. Stories about revelation. Story is its discovery. It's its discovery the author wants to share with us. So, in Lonely American, there are many places. In each chapter, there are 35 chapters. There are 4 parts. In each chapter, there are multiple level of messages that I wanted to send out. And it's almost like, what was that, finding Easter eggs or something? That I love to do that. No, this is something I learned how to do after I come to America when it's a little. And jobs. I can't keep track, but I think I probably wrote about 26 jobs. And then it was like, which part should be dialogues? And which part should be narratives? How do I just craft a message inside? It cannot be too obvious, because I don't want to beat people over the head with it. Right? So the best part is, like in Chinese saying, there's like 点到为止. Right? You just like give them people like several hints and let them figure it out. Oh, I got it. I mean, this is what I love about reading some of the classics, right? I remember reading, the first time I read War and Peace. Oh, it was awful. How would anybody read this? I was like, but I read it for the 3rd time just 2 years ago, and I even read it in Chinese, and it was beautiful. I mean, I love like every single character. And then Anna Karenina, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. And it's like so these are things, and there's some books like Camus, Le Corsaire, The Stranger. When you read it at 17, you think, what is it? I don't understand what it is you're talking about. What the heck is existence existentialiste and all that stuff? But then when you read it at 33, and then now 53, and they say, I got it. That's the messages. I mean, I think that is the beauty of our literature, right? And so all of a sudden I got hooked, and I say, well, should I model myself after these brilliant people? Well, one can try. One can only try. And so as an author, the one thing that I find very happy is when somebody sends you, some feedback or some quotes in review, and they sort of like saying something that you actually wanted to say. It's like one of the messages. It does it. So and this one is from this guy's Jonathan. He was actually a Navy man. Right? He's like a very macho guy. And I was kind of surprised that he didn't really criticize my book in a bad way. So I was very happy. And so I said earlier, the book has multiple messages. A 70-year-old professor may think this is an anti-war book. A mother with 2 to 3 children, little children, may think that this is a book about relationship between father and daughter. And some of my friends who have read the book say, oh, Vera, this is just a romance. No. that is the part I really enjoy the most. It's like you never know. It's like Christmas time, you know. You like somebody sends you all these things that, oh yeah, no, that's what they think. So all these nice little surprises and comments and the process of connecting with my readers and talk to them and discuss with them. That was really nice. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful process. So this is from Dr. Robert Fuller. He himself, he's a social reformer and a college president, and he went to Vietnam in 1965. So he was very interested in my book. It was nice to get this quote from him. And this is from a retired American diplomat, Sid Goldsmith. And I always love to hear the feedback from especially the Vietnam War veteran. I think it's really meaningful to me. My brother-in-law himself was an Air Force officer in Vietnam. And last but not least is my fellow writer in the Writers Club right here at Belmont. So this will conclude the presentation, but I would like to read some passage for you, okay? And then we'll follow, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. So as I mentioned earlier, so should I read the flap? I'm not going to read the flap. Should I read the flap? Huh? Yes? Okay. I need to wear glasses because I had 2 corneal transplants. Otherwise I'll be blind. The Lonely American, Saigon, 1962. The United States is trying to help South Vietnamese government defeat a communist insurgency. An American Air Force officer, David Emerson, meets a lovely young woman, Lucy Hong. David has a girlfriend back home, but Lucy arouses feelings in him that he can't control. And Lucy is swept off her feet. David disappears into the war and becomes a hero of the Air Force, flying 47 missions without a scratch to himself. But he never forgets Lucy. Some years after they have separated, he finds her, and she tells him about Emma, the daughter he gave her. Unlike so many others, David is not a man to love and run. When Saigon falls to the communists, David hurries back to a flaming city, which most people are trying to escape, desperately determined to rescue Lucy and Emma. They were nowhere to be found. Years go by. As tragedy strikes his own family, David manages to locate Lucy, Emma in France, and he goes there. Lucy is lost to him, while Emma loathes and mistrusts him. The Lonely American bids fair to be the great story of Vietnam, full of unforgettable characters and showing the war as history and literature have never quite managed to portray it. More than anything, The Lonely American is an inspirational tale that touches the reader and gives the gift of greater life. So I will leave you with this quote from one of my favorite writers, Graham Greene. Do people like Graham Greene? Anybody like Graham Greene? Yay! I never know anyone who had better intentions for all the troubles he caused. Thank you. All right. No questions, right?
I got a question.
Nobody had better intentions than what was the last word?
I never knew anyone who had better intentions
Then
for all the troubles he had caused. Yes,
I have a question.
yes.
I was a Vietnamese refugee myself in 1975. So I read through many Vietnam War books, and this is one of the books that once I started, I couldn't let it go, and I had to finish it in 2 days, honestly. Very well written book, and I like it. I only have one question for you. When I read through the first chapter, I had a feeling that you were one of the main characters in the book.
Very good question. Excellent question. Next.
Were you or were you not?
Next. Anybody else? Any questions? Do you have a follow-up question?
No,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
because you didn't answer my question.
Thank you. Yes, Sandra.
So, this was a book you self-published. Talk a little bit about. It is, right?
It's not actually.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
it was published in Taiwan.
So,
Published.
did the publisher help you market it? Or how have you gone about marketing your book, both here and in
Huh.
States?
Writing is the best part. Okay, marketing is much less fun. This book was published by Vista Publishing, and they published both the English and the Chinese version. So let me explain why do I feel so strongly about publishing the book in Taiwan? Because this book was dedicated to my father, and my father loved Taiwan, and I had a very difficult relationship with my father for many years, until maybe 1 year before he died. I tried hard to make it up, but it was just not enough time. My father, of course, didn't speak English, right? So if I dedicated this book to him, and I thought that I must translate it in Chinese, and I have to publish it in Taiwan. And I did, and it was a wonderful experience. You know, what I found out like a lot of my father's old friends, comrades, spies, friends, or whatever, they all came up, from nowhere, and they come and talk to me, and they tell me great stories about my father, who I never knew. I said he was an absentee father. He always served his country first, and he said, oh no, he was a great leader. He was a great leader. I said, he was an agent. He was a spy. He's not a spy. He was the head of the spy. So. Yeah, that in itself, it was a big accomplishment for me. Marketing is hard. I don't know. Anything works. It's like, I think social networking. It's a great way. But I think it's also marketing to like different groups of readers. It's very hard because you never know who likes your book or and there are millions and millions of books out there, and people don't read anymore. Very sad. People don't have time to read. Twitter, don't tell me anything more than 122 characters. I have no time. Okay, just tweet me. Good, right? So it's like, make your point, right? MBAs, right? Harvard MBAs, like, we have no time. Just it's sad. So
But did your company help you, the publishing company?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They identify magazines. They do interviews. You know, they set up interviews. They set up talks for me in universities and colleges.
This is over in Taiwan?
This is over in Taiwan, and also they do it in Singapore, and they do it in Los Angeles. Yeah. So they set up. They make the introduction, and then I have to go and bridge the gap myself. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.